Hi, this is Pete Lyons with Let's Play Salesforce, and today we're doing Summer 18 spoilers, so bust out that safe harbor slide and let's get started. Well, apparently Mother Nature didn't get the memo because it is totally snowing in Buffalo right now. But please make purchasing decisions based on currently available offerings. I don't work for Salesforce or speak for Salesforce. This is commentary, not documentation. First new feature I wanted to cover tonight is very simple and understated, yet very powerful. I have wanted to see this feature since prior to the Spring 16 release, and that is, finally, a counter to tell us how many data flows we have consumed out of our cap. We also get an increase from 30 runs per day to 40 runs per day, which is a really healthy sign of the improved efficiencies that we're seeing in the back-end data flow functionality. So again, really awesome update. So a couple light aesthetic changes that we're seeing this time around. We do have some new icons for dashboards and lenses. We still can't change the icon associated with a particular data set. I would like to see that at some point. No offense to Team Hexagon and all. If we hop into the dashboard or lens editor, we can also see that there has been a really nice improvement to the layout of the different chart options that we have. Now they're actually categorized, and it's a lot easier to find what you're looking for. And if you're like me and you're not feeling super inspired and you forget about the suggested chart features that will tell you all the other different chart types that can support your number of measures and groupings, it's really good to have this not just from an organizational standpoint, but also from kind of a brainstorming standpoint. We also see that the additional fields section of the lens editor has been relabeled to unused fields, and we have this much easier to notice informational block that kind of explains to you a little bit about what that is. This next feature might seem a little small, but it's nicer than you think. If I go to the formatting options, we can see that my legend is sorted alphabetically. I can scroll down to the legend section, click the reverse ordering checkbox, and now it's reverse alphabetical. Oh, what's this new button down here? Pretty self-explanatory actually. It's a navigational tab for all of our available pages. If I just want to spam away pages, it'll just keep adding them. I've got to move the bar on to any that I want it to appear on, just like I would any other widget. But now if I go back to my first page, I can see that now I have this navigator panel that takes me to those other pages. Probably should have put it on all of them. Maybe I'll just do that. There, now it's on all of them. So as I tab through different pages, keeps it highlighted for me. Probably have some basic color options on this one. We've got some tab stylings to choose from. Pretty self-explanatory, usually the sort of thing that we'd have to replicate for ourselves out of a bunch of link widgets. So nice improvement. So I'm always telling people that first you should go with the compare table, then you should go with data flow, and then you should go with SAQL. Well, if you go with compare tables as the source for your calculated columns that you're going to use in subsequent bindings, then you'll know that in your binding you're going to need to call out the column of the compare table by its letter. So your first column's A, your second column's B, and then likely your first calculated column is going to be C, or if you take things as extreme as I do, it might be L. This can cause quite a problem for debugging and development, especially if you go back and edit that compare table. Now you've misaligned those columns and you're pulling a different one, or you're trying to figure out, well, which column is it that I need to get the results from, and you're going A, B, C, D, and counting all the way across, and it just creates a lot of issues. So now what we have the ability to do on the edit column page is also call out a column alias. So we can see that my value column is has the alias of my column, and this is what I'm going to need to reference in my bindings. So if I take a look at my column right here, we can see that that is the name and the header is my value. And when I bind into that, it's that my column column name that I'm going to actually need to reference in my bindings. So this means that as I add additional columns to my compare table and juggle them all around, I'm not going to have to go back and update the rest of my dashboard. And if I want to actually get to the column that's causing me some sort of issue that I need to debug, I'm going to be able to find it quickly instead of having to do this weird counting ritual that I always end up getting tripped up on. So really glad to see this. So I have one last feature that I'm going to cover tonight. I'm going to give it a little more time than usual because this is probably the most requested feature that I've never been able to deliver on up until this point. It is conditional formatting, not only on tables, but on all possible spectrums. Let's dive into this one angle at a time here. So first, let's start with the really simple one. Maybe I want to see negative numbers as red. So I'm going to go to conditional formatting on that column. I'm going to add a rule. I'm going to say 0 and set my color to red and apply. Well, there we go. Now my negative numbers are red. How many people have asked for that? All of them. Now we have it. This is awesome. Okay, well, what else can we do with it? Can we do it on dimension columns? Yeah, let's take a look at that. I'm going to go to Format Column. So I got my column selected here. I'm going to click the conditional formatting, add a rule. I'm going to leave use dimensional values as is for the moment. Hit pick values and just pick the guys that I want to color based off of. So for blue, blue, and look at that. It might not be the best on the eyes, but you know, I never said aesthetics were my bag. So the previous use case is great if we're working with a fixed set of values in a pick list, such as opportunity stage, but what if I needed something with a bit of softer edges, like a bucketing system? So in this case, I'm going to say, well, if my territory name contains West, that's when I want to highlight. So in order to do this, first I'm going to need a calculated column to use as a reference. So I'm going to edit my column, hit the plus sign, and add a case statement. Now that I've got my calculated column, I'm going to go back to the formatting options on territory name, add a conditional formatting rule, and this time, instead of using the coloring method of use dimensional values, I'm going to select use color in reference column. Then I'm going to declare that my case statement is my reference column. I'm going to add some bins. So now the result is that anything that has West in it is now highlighted in the grouping column. Pretty cool. Another cool thing that we can do here is we can now change the color of the basic bar graph. So as soon as I select conditional formatting options, for example, player, now we can see that I'm rotating through the default color spectrum that we have available. This doesn't actually leave any footprint on the dashboard JSON, so I'm not 100% sure how we're going to be able to access these values and if we will be able to bind into them, and if so, to what extent, or at least on bar charts. Although I do know that we do have some limited binding capabilities on the compare table options. So the last use case that I'm going to be covering on the conditional highlighting is going to be leveraging a binding from a SQL step to identify rows that belong to the currently logged in user and to highlight those. Now, full disclosure, I don't have this fully working yet. There are still some bugs involved, but I'm pretty confident that it will work. So what I have right here is basically a count of rows and then a column I've named filter that filters by the currently logged in user. This is what I'm actually going to replace with my binding, but this does return greater than 0 for any rows that I own. So the next step for this is I'm going to go to Format. I'm going to select my owner name as my column, add conditional formatting to that. I'm going to select my reference column as filter. I'm going to specify is greater than, and I'm just going to say if it's greater than a 0, and that's when I'm going to want to see my text in blue and my background color in a nice gray. And when I hit apply, we can see now the rows currently belonging to the current user are highlighted. So then if I go here and I hide this, now I've just got the highlight I want without the reference column. Now I'm going to leave this unhidden for a moment just to show why I can't take this all the way through. If I now hit update, the filter column maintains conditional highlighting. It doesn't seem to be working correctly and it's dropped off of the destination column. This is a new feature. I'm quite sure they'll have the kinks worked out of it soon enough, but it does stop me from fully reproducing the next step. So we already know though that I'm able to get the color I want on my rows with that filter statement. The only other thing that would remain is first add a simple SOQL step that pulls in information about the currently logged in user, specifically that user's name. Then just find the place where I'm actually filtering on myself and replace that with my binding. So I am able to pass the user's name in as a binding just fine, but again, we did see that formatting issue right there that we can expect to have that resolved relatively soon. I wouldn't imagine that's going to last too long, but this is basically going to give us the ability to highlight rows belonging to the current user. I'm envisioning that we could potentially use this for highlighting the account on an embedded dashboard in the context of other accounts. This is going to help to quickly draw a user's eye to the data that is most relevant to them. So really glad to see this. This opens up a whole world of possibilities. I'm really interested to see what kind of extreme use cases we're going to be able to produce. So if you're experimenting with this and you figure out something cool, please post it on the community and share with the rest of us. So that's all we have for tonight, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please stay tuned for part 2, which will be out sometime after the release notes, where we will go into a more exhaustive list of all the features that are going to be available. And as always, thanks for watching.